How's it going, guys? Part 8 of the GTO trainer. Today we're doing verse 5 bets. So first hand here, we open under the gun, face a raise from the small blind. We then 3 bet, and then a small blind 5 bet. With this sizing, pretty much calling is once again. So if you watched our last episode, one of the main things that we saw, especially with this king's hand as well, I think it was on 2 different occasions, where GTO essentially says that if your stack to pot ratio is going to be less than 1 if you call, you're going to be all in on the flop regardless because of the stack to pot ratio being so low, you're better off taking the initiative, shoving all in, realizing your equity beforehand, and not scaring off any cards, any hands that might be calling you. For example, like an ace king that's just completely whiffed the flop and then you go all in there. They might get away from that. So this is a standard all in with kings. They call, they have aces. Once again, we aren't results orientated. So you see, so calling about 17% of the time. I'm guessing the idea trying to maybe keep in some 4-bet bluffs. If we look over here at small blind range, but there's the only bluffs here, ace 5 suited, ace 10 suited, the only real bluffs. The only ones you would keep in. But they are saying that, what's this, 0.9, hang on, so if we go to, no, so I thought it would tell us, I'm assuming that might be percentages, so does that mean, in terms of, because there's no shot they would ever fold with aces, so I don't know whether or not that 0.95 has anything to do with that, but or maybe it just shows combo. I've got no idea. Yeah, if we look at our range under the gun here, so yeah, pretty much your main 3 hands, like your best 3 hands, all seem to be, whereas ace king suited is a 97-3, kings about 80-20, ace is same, whereas ace king off facing a 4-bet here is a fold, which is very interesting considering, I'm assuming ace king suited, they're saying that you got the suited at least, because wouldn't they have the same type of properties? They're both blocking aces, they're both blocking kings, they're the nut high, flipping with pretty much everything below it. So this doesn't really make too much sense to me at all, as to why ace king suited is considered better than ace king off. I would have thought it would be kind of the exact same. And I'm very interested as to us folding here to the 4-bet. It does seem very interesting. And then, so ace queen suited is a call. That one's interesting to me, mostly because I'm guessing if we don't hit an ace or a queen on the flop, it would just be a snap fold. So, once again, I would have thought that that might be an all-in, trying to get off some worse hands. But then I guess you kind of, the only real hands that would be folding there are their 4-bet bluffs, which, you know, as we talked about previously, the small blind's got a very, very strong range, so they're not really going to have many bluffs that ace queen, or many hands that ace queen's ahead of, and they're not going to have many bluffs realistically. And then, what's this? So ace 5 suited is about 80-12, well, 87-13. We're calling with ace 4 suited. That one seems interesting, maybe to protect our 4-bet call. Jacks is a call, 10s is a call, 9s is a call. I'm guessing where the strategy there, and queens is a fold, is about a 70-30. So I'm interested as to why we're folding queens 30% of the time, but then we're not folding jacks at all. That seems pretty weird to me. I don't really understand why that would be. I would have thought they would all, like queens, jacks, 10s, 9s would all kind of be treated the same, kind of targeting their ace king mostly to be like, okay, well, if there's nothing on the flop here, we might be ahead. So that's kind of all I've got there. And then, yeah, king, queen suited, king, jack suited, standard folds. Ace 10 calling is a 50-50, ace 10 suited. I'm guessing that's just to balance our 5-bet range. So our 5-bet bluffs are mostly just ace 10 suited and ace 5 suited, as we can see over here on the left-hand side. Those are the only 2 hands that we're looking that the small blind could have as bluffs. and then ace jack's about a 50-50 with a fold. So interest is, I guess, ace queen suited. You're more thinking, okay, we got a better ace, we blocking queens potentially, which is not good because if you got ace queen, you kind of want them like your best case scenario there is queens, I'm guessing, or you would rather be up against ace king maybe, because then you got 30% equity. I can't remember what the equity would be if you're ace queen versus queens. It'll probably be a lot less because you only got one card. No, but that's still a 70-30, I believe. Maybe a little, yeah, but and you're also suited, I guess. But yeah, I think that's still about a 70-30. Yeah, folds from all your other suited aces, so just jack 10, 5, 4. Interested that 4 is 100% a call. I'm guessing, like I said before, that's just to protect your 4-bet calling range, I guess, so it isn't so weak. So they're not just going, it isn't just so strong, so you can get paid sometimes when you're, flatting with your aces, flatting with your ace king, flatting with your kings, I guess. Could be my only theory there. So yeah, the idea, I'm guessing, put it all in, realize your equity straight away. Calls, you pretty much, because if you call there, so what was it, 40, there's going to be 80 in the pot, you got 60 behind, you got less than stack to pot ratio of less than 1. So you should pretty much, you're mandatory all in with kings, even if an ace comes out there majority of the time. Or if you just want to save the 60 bigs, then yeah, I guess. Could be your your only really thought process there, I guess. Moving on to the next hand, so we open under the gun with ace 4 suited, folds around to, so we raise, and then hijack 3-bet, we 3-bet, so hijack 3 being an under the gun range, going to be pretty strong. Then we 3-bet, and then they jam. Ace 4 is within our 3-bet bluffs pretty much, and then so that's our 4-bet bluff. Sorry, so ace 4 is one of our 4-bet bluffs, and I reckon this is just a snap fold. So we pretty much don't really have anything there. If we look at what we would be calling with, we're pretty much just calling aces, ace king, kings. We're calling about 40% of the time with ace king off, 80% of the time with queens. We're calling with jacks, we're calling with 10s, and then we're folding 9s, and then pretty much folding all of our 4-bet bluffs, or 4-bet bluff ace suited, our king suited, and our ace queen off as well. Because we're pretty much, as you can see on the right hand side, hijack's jam, a 5-bet jam range is pretty much just these 4, and they're not going to find many bluffs there, and they're not going to have any bluffs either. So moving on to the next hand, we open under the gun, small blind 3-bets. So once again, small blind, very very strong range, as they're incentivized to complete a lot of times. And they're 3-betting a very strong under the gun range. We then 4-bet, pretty standard with ace king, sometimes flat, I believe, in position, and then they shove all in. We saw it beforehand, but I'm pretty certain this is about 80-20%, and I think the right move is the call. No. It was the fold. It was the other way around. Fold ace king off majority of the time, but ace king suited is a call there, is what I'm pretty certain. So if we go to our range here, ace king suited, 100% a call. Ace king off, about an 80-20. 80-20 in favor of folding. Kings call, jacks down call, queens call about only 10% of the time. I don't understand this. Why are we calling 99% of the time with jacks, and then we're folding queens? Is that because we're thinking they have ace queen and we want to unblock their ace queen and unblock their king queen? Because I don't really think they're going to have that in a 5-bet jam. So I'm very confused as to why we're folding queens 90% of the time, and then we're calling with jacks 100% of the time. And then we're folding 9s, but then we're calling with 10s. Because when, like, 10s, 9s, and jacks, and probably queens, especially versus a 5-bet jam, most likely all have 20% equity or 50-50. So there's no, I don't really understand in terms of, there's no real difference between all the hands. Like, against a 5-bet jam, then, like, queens is almost the same as 2s. You got to hit a queen and you got to hit a 2, essentially. Unless you want to start thinking about straights, but that's going to require a 1-card straight, and same with flushes, 1-card flush. So that doesn't really make much sense to me at all. And I would have thought they would kind of be treated the same, and especially in terms of why are we folding queens, but then we're calling with jacks. I'll definitely go and research that later. Moving on to the next hand, under the gun, facing a button 5-bet jam. So when we're opening and the button 3-bets, going to be a strong range for the button, but we are thinking mostly more suited connectors, like they're more weighted towards some suited connecty cards, potentially, because the button's going to have a wider 3-bet range due to playing in position, but still going to be decently strong considering we are into the gun. Then when we 4-bet and they jam, ace-king suited is a call there, ace-king off the fold, ace-king suited a call. Moving on to the next hand, we're in the low jack, once again facing a 5-bet jam. So we open in the low jack. This is a button 3-bet, so not as of a tighter range as previously. Low jack's going to have a little bit of a wider range than under the gun, meaning the button's able to 3-bet wider as well. And then gets back to us. We do a standard 4-bet with ace-king off, and then a 5-bet jam. So as we just discussed before, what? Okay, I guess during... yeah, no, that makes sense. Because versus small... Okay, so it's not always the same. Yeah, that's fair enough. I forgot to consider that. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Because a button's going to have a little bit of a wider range due to us being in the low jack rather than under the gun. So ace-king there would be... Ace-king off is a call now. If we look over here, so yeah, ace-king off is now a call. Queens is now a call. Jacks is now a fold. See, okay, well, I'd love to understand the theory behind this as to terms of, okay, well, now because we're from the low jack, we're now looking at jacks being a fold and queens being a call, 10s being a call, 9s still being a fold. I'd really love to understand the theory behind that, so I'll definitely need to research that part. But yeah, so because we're low jack versus button, and we've raised from the low jack rather than from under the gun, the villain's range is going to be wider, not only because they're on the button, but it's also going to be wider because we're acting later, so our range is inherently looser and wider because we're acting a little bit later. And we're going to be opening a little bit wider from the low jack in comparison to under the gun. Moving on to the next hand, so we open in the hijack, cut off 3-bet, so pretty much very similar to the last hand in terms of we're going to have a little bit of a wider range when we get here. Cutoff's going to have a little bit of a wider range in comparison just because we're acting later. They can, and we're going to have a wider range. They have a wider range that they're able to 3-bet us with. It's not going to be as tight as versus a 3-bet versus an under the gun, which is going to be very, very tight. So then we 4-bet here in the hijack, and then it's a cutoff all in. I believe this is a standard fold with King Jack. So I'm under the impression that we're only calling with, I would assume, same top 4 of aces, kings, both ace kings, and I'm assuming queens is a call there as well, and then we might be, and then it's kind of a 50-50 with the other. Well, not 50-50, but it's going to be some form of like an 80-20 or 70-30 with the other pocket pairs, and then pretty much folding all of our 4-bet bluffs, pretty much. So top 4, standard call with top 4. Queens are call, jacks are call, folding only just tiny percent of the time. 10s call 15% of the time, fold 85%. And then pretty much folding all of our bluffs and our lower pocket pairs. So yeah, that one makes perfect sense. A little bit of a wider range, however, still not wide enough. The only real hand that gets in there is the ace king off that we saw from the previous hand. Here, don't really talk about a hand history. You have aces, just call any jam. So we're looking at an under the gun open 3-bet from the big blind. We then 4-bet when the big blind. So because obviously they're going to be acting first, incentivized to complete a lot, it's going to be a very strong range. Especially when they're 3-betting an already strong under the gun range, and then when they 5-bet jam there, I'm assuming it's going to be very, very, pretty much just the 3 aces, ace king suited, and kings that are going to be calling, not ace king off, because they're 3-betting from the big blind and they're 3-betting an under the gun strong range. So it's going to be very extremely tight, and it's going to be a lot tighter than what we were talking about more in the hijack, low jack getting 3-betted by the button or 3-betted by the cutoff, which is going to be a wider range mostly. So we're able to be calling there with ace king off, but when it's big blind versus under the gun, we're going to have to really only be calling with those top 3 of aces, ace king suited, and kings. Moving on to the next hand, here we are again in the low jack. So in the low jack we raise up, 3-bet from the small blind, we then do a 4-bet, and they do a very small 5-bet. So in contrast to the previous hands where we've had a 5-bet jams, this is a smaller sizing of a 5-bet. Very similar thing in terms of what we were talking about before. Because we're going to have a stack to pot ratio of less than 1. We're going to have about 60 bigs behind with about 80 bigs in the pot. However, I believe an all-in here will only isolate top of range. So I'm kind of between a fold or a call. I reckon you call here probably about, I'm going to guess 20-30% of the time, and then you fold everything else, mostly because the only real way you're going to win with jacks is calling here, praying they've got ace king, because they're not going to really have many bluffs here from the small blind, which is a very, very strong range, so I'm leaning towards a fold. So what are we looking at here? So it's about pretty much all options are correct. You're folding a third of the time, you're calling a third of the time, and you're going all in a third of the time. So I just don't understand an all in there. If we look at, so they do have some bluffs here, is what they're saying from the small blind. I'm guessing the reason why they're saying they do have some bluffs here is because we are in the low jack, so they might be 3-betting a little bit wider because we're in the low jack, even though that they should be still very, very tight. As you can see, they are still very, very tight from the small blind because they do have to act first, and they are incentivized to just complete a lot of times. So it's not surprising to see that they clearly have a very, very strong range. However, I am perplexed as to why jacks is, I would have thought it would pretty much just be a call and a fold. Pray that they have an probably not an underpair here. They're probably not going to have an underpair, and pretty much the all-ins just only going to get called when they have aces, kings, ace king suited, and then the call here, stack to pot ratio is going to be so low that they're probably going to jam with any 2 cards, and you're going to be calling it all in anyways, so a call doesn't make sense to me either. Maybe at a small frequency, potentially, just to protect your 4-bet calling range, to have some jacks in there every so often, but I reckon it should be more of a fold majority of the time, just because this is pretty much bottom of range. If we have a look, I mean, you could we're going all in with 9s sometimes here, and we're also calling with 9s. So I guess that's bottom of range. We're calling all the time with 10s, and we're actually calling all the time with 8s as well. So I guess we're just being a little bit wider because they're 3-betting us or 5-betting us from the small blind versus our already wide low jack range. So we're able to be a little bit wider in our calling, I guess, is the idea. I guess it's dependent on where your position is, and then that kind of dictates how wide you could be calling depending on what you think your range is and how they could interpret your range and how they could think, oh, can I get away with a 3-bet here against their range? How is my 3-betting looking against that range? So we're back to an under the gun range, raise, so we're going to be very, very tight. Hijack 3-bet, so they're going to have, even if though they are acting later, they're still 3-betting a very, very tight under the gun range. Then we do a 4-bet, they 5-bet jam, we've got kings, so this is pretty much one of those situations where because we're under the gun, their 3-bet and their 5-bet's going to be incredibly, incredibly strong due to us having a very tight range and them having to be 3-betting and 5-betting with a very, very tight range, or tighter range even. So we're pretty much only calling here with kings, aces, and ace-king suited, and we're even folding ace-king off, as we can see up here. So yeah, folding ace-king off, calling sometimes with queens, calling with jacks. So yeah. Moving on to the next hand, pretty much exact same situation. However, we're under the gun versus under the gun. So we open under the gun +2, then 3-bet. So this is still going to be a very, very strong range as they're 3-betting under the gun, but they're also 3-betting with 6 left to act. So there's 6 people left to act behind them, and they're also 3-betting a very strong under the gun range. So this is going to be an extremely, extremely tight range. Then when we 4-bet and then they do a very small 5-bet size, this is going to be a very similar situation as we talked about before in terms of if we call here, there's going to be 66 in the middle. Stack to pot ratio is going to be less than 1. So I lean towards just putting all the money in now. And evidently that's the wrong... So we should be calling there, I guess. So I'm supposed that the idea of calling here is to try and keep in some of their... But I just don't really think they're going to have many bluffs at all. Like, yeah, okay, we might be able to keep in ace-5 suited, ace-10 suited, like some of their suited aces, and then queens maybe. But I would assume. So what if we? So yeah, I kind of understand that because if we go all in because we're from under the gun, they're only going to be calling us with aces, ace king off, and well, not ace king suited and kings. So we're either chopping, we're either in good shape against ace-king suited, or we are in horrific shape versus aces. So I kind of understand the call, trying to keep in ace-king off a lot of their 4-bet bluffs. Well, sorry, their 5-bet bluffs, especially considering they did it to a smaller sizing. So I guess that could be working out of favor with a call, but we would virtually be all in on the flop a lot of times there, considering the stack to pot ratio is going to be 0.9, 0.8, something like that, probably 0.9. So we're going to be all on the flop majority of the time there anyways, so I would have thought that it would be beneficial to just get all the money in, take down 33 bigs if they are bluffing. Not allowed it because a lot of their bluffs are going to have an ace, so they're still going to have about 30% equity there against your kings, about 70-30, with what, 3 outs to hit that ace, and then so I kind of prefer the deny equity from those hands that could still win against you, take down 33 bigs versus their bluffs, rather than trying to maximize, because they're most likely going to fold a lot of times if they don't hit an ace, or even if they don't hit a flush or whatever they've got. I would think. But yes, I do kind of understand that, you know, we might just get value owned a lot of times, getting called by aces and then chopping with kings, and pretty much only in good shape against ace-king. But yeah, so it's kind of... So I understand why it would be, but like what this situation is in terms of 60% call, try to keep in bluffs, trying to keep in hands that you are dominating, or keep in hands that you do have a good shape against, rather than hands you just kind of either really polarized against. You're either in good shape against ace king, you're either chopping with kings or you're dominated by aces. Is pretty much the only three hands that they'll be calling, considering that they're doing it versus a very tight under the gun range and from their own very tight under the gun +2 range. Well, I hope you guys learned something. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.